The serene landscapes of Trentino in northern Italy are frozen in time and space and hold dark and sinister secrets. One day, while Maurizio Vicenzi is walking on the snowy slopes of San Matteo, he sees a disturbing sight. 3 corpses dangling from an ice wall. As the glaciers melted on this mountainside, a frightening sight emerged. The remains of the 3 young men had remained undiscovered for almost 100 years. Their discovery was of particular importance to Vicenzi, who worked as a mountain guide and was a member of a local mountain rescue group. He was also an amateur historian and director of a military history museum. And his family was involved in the same events that had taken the men's lives. Speaking to the BBC in August 2004, Vicenzi described the frightening moment he stumbled across the bodies. He said, "Using binoculars, I saw what looked like a spot on the Forni Glacier and went to investigate. When I got closer, I realized that they were the bodies of soldiers who had died and the glaciers were frozen. Something like that has never happened in my life." And the discovery, says Vicenzi, has implications not just for military scholars, but also for the community of Pio and its neighbors. He said, "No bodies have been found in the ice here for decades. This is an important discovery from a historical perspective and exciting for communities on both sides of the border." In the 1970s, Pio was little more than a remote farming village in the Dolomites. Today, however, the place lives on the money of tourists who come from countries like Italy and Russia. One could even say that Pio has developed into a modest but well-established ski resort. There are also ancient glaciers in the mountains around Pio, which rise steeply to almost 3,400 meters. But the region's importance is much more than just geological. Digged into the frozen expanse lies a network of World War I trenches, offering moving glimpses of a truly brutal battlefield. Italy's role in this conflict began on May 23, 1915, with the signing of the Treaty of London. This was a secret agreement that linked Great Britain, Russia and France with Italy. In fact, the country was pressured into entering the war by a nationalist movement called Unredeemed Italy. The followers of this movement advocated a radical expansion of national borders. For example, Trentino and neighboring South Tyrol were areas of the Austro-Hungarian Empire at the time. On the other hand, the areas were also viewed by Italy as unredeemed areas. The battle to retake these territories became known as the White War, a historic event that saw the establishment of an 18-kilometer front through frozen mountains. And Pio was particularly affected by the conflict because its residents were not allowed to leave the village. Speaking to the British newspaper The Telegraph in 2013, the mayor of Pio, Angelo D'Alpes, said, "The Austro-Hungarian emperor decreed that this village should not be evacuated. As the highest village in the empire, it was symbolic a message to the rest." At the same time, the terrain's rugged, high-altitude geography required the development of an entirely new type of warfare. In some ways, however, the Italians were better prepared for battle, as they already had brigades of specially trained mountain soldiers, the Alpini. The Austrians, on the other hand, had to set up their own mountain troops from scratch. They were called Kaiserschützen. But the distinction between Alpini and Kaiserschützen was not always clear. In fact, many of the troops drafted into the White War were simply locals who knew their way around the mountains. These men were therefore often friends with each other, regardless of which side they fought on. Sometimes, for example, cousins or brothers represented conflicting loyalties. Historically, comparatively little is known about the conflict, partly because only a few reporters dared to go to the front. Today, however, the alpine glaciers are retreating, exposing the bodies of the war dead. Historians and forensic experts are now trying to piece together what happened in this high-altitude war zone. Excavations have shown that both sides used complex military infrastructures under incredibly difficult conditions. The soldiers dug tunnels and trenches, laid communication cables, built roads and set up cable cars to transport supplies. And on the Marmolada, the highest mountain in the Dolomites, a so-called ice city was even built into a glacier. However, as in the desolate trench warfare of northern Europe, artillery bombing also played a central role in the White War. Recently, salvagers and historians have recovered a wealth of material and ammunition from the mountains. These include, for example, rifles, helmets, gas masks, unexploded bombs and grenades. In 2005, for example, Vicenzi discovered a cave in Punta Linky, a place that rises almost 2,000 meters above Po. In this cave, Vicenzi found a variety of military equipment, including ammunition and helmets. However, he soon discovered that there was a man-made structure beneath the cave. With the help of local friends, the expert began to research them. 2 years later, Franco Nicholas of the Archaeological Heritage Office of Trento carried out a full excavation of the site. He discovered a wooden cable car station. Access to the station was via a 30-meter-long tunnel that ran through the mountain. However, when Nicholas discovered the station, it was full of ice. To clear them, he used huge fans. This station was actually used to deliver military supplies to the front line. The boxes were transported up by cable car and then pressed through the shaft. They were then transported 1,200 meters with the help of another cantilever cable car. The entire process could be observed through a window next to the exit of the tunnel. Inside the station, Nicholas and his team also discovered a dismantled Sendlinger engine that had been manufactured in Munich. The group also found instructions pinned to the wall on how to operate the locomotive, as well as a newspaper clipping showing queues for food in Vienna. In 1916, basic foodstuffs in Austria-Hungary were apparently becoming increasingly scarce. An Austro-Hungarian garrison was rescued on the Corno di Cavento Glacier, thanks to the efforts of a local alpine club. This military post contained straw beds, a commander's office and a storage room. The site therefore offers a rare and intimate glimpse into everyday life during an often overlooked chapter of the First World War. And as we've heard, the retreat of the glaciers has also left personal items exposed. Examples of such items include soldiers' diaries, uniforms, photographs, playing cards, sewing kits and, perhaps most heartbreakingly, unsent love letters. So you could say that the trenches in Trentino were lonely and fearful places like many other places in war-torn Europe. Among the items recovered from the Punta Linky cable car station was a postcard from Bohemia addressed to Georg Christoph, a surgeon in the Corps of Engineers. It was sent by his wife, describes a sleeping woman, and contains a simple message in Czech. This reads, "Your abandoned lover." A tender letter to a Maria was also found in a pile of unsent letters. The unfortunate young men who were sent into the mountains also did not fare well. Around 150,000 died in the Italian Alps, and only a third of them died in combat. The rest succumbed to frostbite and hypothermia. And some others even fell victim to landslides and avalanches. Researcher Stefano Morosini from the University of Milan spoke about it with National Geographic. In the accounts of this period, in the war diaries whether from Austria or from Italy, we find the same stories of the terrible privations caused by the lack of sleep, the torment and the massive snowfalls, he said. The enemy was secondary. The real enemy was nature itself. Both sides fought heroically in the battle. But their progress was often small and hardly justified the loss of life. After more than 3 years of escalating fighting, the Battle of Vittorio Veneto proved decisive. On November 3, 1918, Italian troops advanced through the Austrian lines and forced them to surrender. The 3 bodies discovered on San Matteo in 2004 represent only a fraction of the bodies recovered in the Alps in recent years. While over 80 bodies have been found in the region's glaciers and treacherous crevices, unfortunately it is almost impossible to identify many of them. However, the physical condition of the bodies is relatively intact. Because they were frozen in ice for decades, many remains are fully mummified, making good quality DNA samples easy to obtain. However, because there is no national DNA database, it is not possible to link the bodies to living relatives. Nevertheless, by analyzing the remains, scientists were able to learn something about the soldiers' history. For example, most had a damaged spine, probably caused by hard physical labor. Forensic anthropologist Daniel Gaudio told National Geographic they fought while suffering pain that we today would consider unbearable. It is also suspected that the 3 bodies recovered in San Matteo may actually have been those of stretcher bearers. Their equipment included belts and a gas mask, and their pockets were filled with bandages. Otherwise, the dead were unarmed. It is therefore assumed that the men died from a shell impact during the Battle of San Matteo on September 3, 1918. The Battle of San Matteo, which took place at the end of the summer of 1918, was the final battle for control of the mountain. For more than 80 years, it was considered the highest battle in human history, a decisive battle at a dizzying height of 3,678 meters. However, in 1999, it was surpassed by the Archaeological conflict at 5,600 meters. The Battle of San Matteo was actually preceded by the reinforcement of the Austro-Hungarian troops at the summit of San Matteo in early 1918. The soldiers' position had been reinforced with small artillery pieces, which they used to bombard the path to the Gavia Pass. This disrupted the Italian convoys transporting vital goods. But on August 13, 1918, a small Alpini battalion launched a successful surprise attack on the Austro-Hungarian post. About 50% of the Kaiserschützen then had to retreat down the slopes. The other half were captured. But the Empire did not want to let such a humiliating defeat go unpunished. Before the Italians could secure their defenses, it launched a counterattack. With the aim of recapturing the mountain, the Austro-Hungarian military launched Operation Gems on September 3, 1918. The subsequent attack on San Matteo began with heavy artillery bombardment. Subsequently, ground troops about 150 Kaiserschützen were sent from a regiment stationed in Dimro. It didn't take long for the Empire to retake the station and win. But the Battle of San Matteo wasn't quite over yet. The Italians believed their position was lost and began bombing the summit. And their actions caused casualties on both sides. When the smoke finally cleared, 10 Italians and 17 Austro-Hungarian soldiers had died, but the mountain still belonged to the Empire. After all, it was Austria-Hungary's last triumph. The discovery of the 3 bodies in San Matteo has also provoked some thought-provoking reactions. So Nicholas told the Telegraph that they feel contemporary. He said, "They come out of the ice the same way they went in." So the relatively untouched condition of the bodies suggests a death that may have occurred recently, which is somewhat frightening. Today, however, the 3 bodies were finally buried. They now lie buried in a local cemetery, where the city's growing war museum commemorates the sacrifices of both sides. Angelo D'Alp is the mayor of Pio, explained to the Telegraph that the municipality considers the facility to be collective property. In 2012, 2 more bones were buried in the cemetery. They are probably 17 and 18-year-old Austrian soldiers who died in the Battle of Presina in May 1918. The bodies were found upright in a crevasse near the Presina Glacier, their skulls shattered by bullets. At the subsequent funeral in Pio, 3 hymns were played: the Austrian, the Italian and the Ode to Joy, reflecting the spirit of internationalism that forms the foundation of modern Europe. Speaking to the Telegraph in 2014, D'Alp said, "The people who fought here were Europeans before their time. Sadly, there will likely be many more war victims recovered from the ice in the future. And even if the commemoration offers a glimmer of hope for future generations, after all, forgetting the war dead could condemn Europe to repeat its mistakes. The mountains around Pio are clearly doomed." As Italian war poet Giuseppe Ungaretti once wrote, "Snow is truly a sign of mourning." And what was the result of this conflict? Well, in 1919 Trentino was annexed to Italy under the Treaty of Saint-Germain-en-Laye. However, little changed for the communities living there. In the remote mountains there has always been a feeling of autonomy and isolation from the outside world. So life went on as before, despite the losses and horrors of the White War. Nevertheless, Pio is a place that has never forgotten its history. Because the bodies that emerged from the ice are not nameless historical artifacts, but rather long-lost relatives who died in what was probably the most brutal of conflicts. Maurizio Vicenzi's own family, which fought on the side of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, may well have been related to the 3 men he discovered in 2004. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.